Alright, so we've been talking about this shape called a parabola, where it touches the y-axis, where it touches the x-axis. And in this particular video, we're specifically going to be talking about finding the x-intercepts. Okay, so if you wanted to find the x-intercept or x-intercepts of a quadratic function, what do you have to do? Well, if it touches the x-axis, what is the y-coordinate? The y-coordinate is 0. So this time you're going to plug the 0 in for y and then solve it for x. So in this image here you can see that it's another kind of fountain, like a maybe it's even from a drinking fountain or something, I don't know. And it makes the shape of a parabola. It's an interesting image. Okay, so let's try that right here. Find the x-intercepts of y equals x squared minus 6x minus 7. Okay, so what we're supposed to do, if I'm finding the x-intercepts, let me switch back to blue. Okay, x-intercept means that y is equal to 0. So I'm going to go 0 equals x squared minus 6x minus 7. Now what? Well, am I supposed to just get x all by itself? Maybe add the 6x over and add the 7 over? Well, then I'm going to have x's on both sides. That's crazy. What am I supposed to do here, right? So the problem here is, how are you supposed to solve that equation if you can't just get x by itself like you're so used to doing? So the answer is, since you have 0 equals and then you have something over there on the right hand side, you're just going to apply the 0 product property. In order to have the 0 product property applied, this side over here has to be the product of two things. Something times something equals 0, so at least one of them is 0. In order to get that, that means that you have to apply an F word. You have to factor. Factor. Boop. That's what we're going to do. Okay, so the standard form of a quadratic equation in one variable is written like this. Quadratic equation, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. We're going to see this quite a bit throughout this whole entire unit. Of course, a is not 0. If a was 0, this wouldn't be quadratic anymore. It would be bx plus c. It would be linear. Okay, so solving a quadratic equation in standard form is the same thing as finding the x-intercepts of y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. Why is that? Well, what's the difference between this equation right here and the one that's in the purple box? Well, this one has equals 0, this one has equals y. Well, when y is equal to 0, what it is that you're finding are the x-intercepts. So this is what I'm saying. Solving that quadratic equation, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, is the same thing as finding the x-intercepts of the graph of the parabola. Okay? So we can solve this by using the 0 product property. Well, in certain circumstances, we're going to come back to that word certain quadratic equations, if you can write ax squared plus bx plus c as the product of two expressions. How are you going to get it as a product? You're going to factor. So again, let's go back to that word certain. Why does it say only certain? Think about for just a second. Why can I only solve certain one of these things by using the 0 product property, as in factoring that thing? Well, the answer is that sometimes that left-hand side there is prime, that you can't factor it. And in that case, you're going to have to use a different method. And we're going to find some other methods throughout this unit, like completing the square using the quadratic formula, things like that. Okay, so let's actually find the x-intercepts of y equals x squared minus 6x minus 7. So what do I do first? I'm going to set y equal to 0, and I'm going to apply the 0 product property by factoring the right-hand side of that. Okay, so if I'm going to factor this thing, I need a product and a sum. So they're going to multiply up to that negative 7. Product equals negative 7, and they're going to add up to this negative 6. So the sum equals negative 6. So what do the two factors have to be? Well, since 7 is prime, it can only be 1 and 7. That's it. Since we have to add up to negative 6, so 7 has to be negative and 1 has to be positive. So we're just going to put those straight into the parentheses because this has a leading coefficient of 1. So this is how we factor it, x minus 7 times x plus 1. Now applying the zero product property means that you take each one of those factors and you set them equal to 0. So over here on the left hand side, x minus 7 equals 0, and then you solve it, you just add the 7 over, you get x equals 0. Or on the right hand side, we have x plus 1 equals 0, subtract the 1 over, x is equal to negative 1, which means our two x-intercepts are 7, 0 and negative 1, 0. Now I want to call your attention to something. The fact that the actual x-intercepts are the opposite numbers of the numbers that were in the factors. Right? If this says minus 7, your actual x-intercept is positive 7. If it says plus 1, x-intercept is negative 1. Why is that? It's because those x's are liars, remember? Anything associated with x are liars. And this shows you exactly why they're lying to you. Whenever you set them equal to 0 and you have to add it or subtract it to the other side, it changes the sign. Okay. So, solving quadratic equations. To solve these things, you're just going to apply the zero product property. So step 1, you're going to factor your quadratic, right? Assuming that the thing is factorable. And then finally, step number 2, you're going to set each of those factors equal to 0 and then solve those tiny, tiny little linear equations. Okay? Oh yeah, set it equal to 0. See that baby? He's got this. All right. Let's try one more of these from scratch. 0 equals x squared minus x minus 42. We're going to solve this quadratic equation, which means I'm going to factor the right side of this. Hey, whoa, whoa. That's not what I wanted to do. So 0 equals something times something. Well, what's the product got to be? It's got to multiply up to negative 42. And what is the sum? Sum is negative 1. So I'm going to try to find two numbers, multiply up to negative 42, add up to negative 1. How about 7 and 6? As long as the 7 is negative and the 6 is positive, right? So I've got x minus 7 and x plus 6. So I got 42 there. If I add them, I get my negative 1. All right. So set each one of these things equal to 0. So x minus 7 equals 0. So x equals 7. And x plus 6 equals 0, which means that x is equal to negative 6. So my two x-intercepts, if I were going to write them as ordered pairs, would be 7, 0 and negative 6, 0. But it doesn't ask for x-intercepts here. It's just saying solve this equation. So we just have two specific x values. X is equal to 7 or x is equal to negative 6. Either one of those would make that quadratic equation equal to 0. Okay, so in the next video, this last video, is just going to be a whole bunch of practice problems of solving quadratic equations by factoring.